Since I'm not going to have a formal lecture on solids, I thought I would just give a walkthrough on how to do your second lab involving finding the densities of solids. So just as a brief introduction, we were talking about in lecture intermolecular forces such as hydrogen bonding, dispersion forces, dipole-dipole between two polar molecules, nonpolar. And those basically involve liquid-liquid interaction. So a molecule of a liquid interacting with another molecule of a liquid, either a different molecule or its own kind, such as water interacting with water would be hydrogen bonding. Water interacting with ethanol would be hydrogen bonding. So whether it's the same liquid or a different liquid, where we're talking about intermolecular forces between liquids. Here we're talking now on intermolecular forces between solids. So solids actually pack together, and they pack together with a lot of symmetry, particularly with regards to the metals. So our focus is going to be on the metals in this lab. So the way we think about packing or intermolecular forces in solids has to do more with the packing in an arrangement called a unit cell. So when you think about a unit cell, imagine you're in a brick house. Each individual brick represents each individual brick of the brick house represents a unit cell. So it's a packing arrangement, a type of packing arrangement. So there's actually 7 different types of unit cells, and we're actually going to focus on subdivisions of this one, the cubic unit cell. So each of these metals that you studied and weighed out in this lab are in some arrangement or derivative of the simple cubic unit cell. Again, think of brick in a brick house. That individual brick, that individual repeating unit is known as a unit cell. So for the metals that you studied in this lab, such as iron and nickel and zinc, there's different spin-offs of a simple cubic unit cell. These dots, by the way, actually represent a lattice point. That is a position where an atom is going to be located. Now this cubic unit cell, the brick in the brick house, will have an edge length, and that is something that you will find. And these lattice points of these atoms will have a radius. So each of these atoms will have a radius. The radius in this lab by default is 1 centimeter. So r, the radius of the atom, which is modeled as a sphere, is 1 centimeter. And the edge length of the unit cell is going to differ. Now it's going to differ based upon whether you are a simple cubic unit cell, a body-centered cubic unit cell, or a face-centered cubic unit cell. So the simplest one, or the simplest unit cell, is where all of the atoms are part of a cube. So each corner of this cube, remember we're talking about the unit cell being a cube. Each corner of this cube has a lattice point representing an atom. So the number of atoms in a simple cubic unit cell is actually 1. So this is 1/8. So you got to remember this is in 3 dimensions. So this is in contact with all the other atoms. This face on the right hand side is in contact with all the other atoms. Same with the top and bottom and front and back. So when you have that packing and you strip it to that individual brick, this lattice point, each of them represents 1/8 of an atom. So you have 8 of these. So 1/8 times 8 is 1 atom. So housed in here is actually 1 atom. In a body-centered cubic unit cell, you have the same arrangement. So 1/8 of an atom, 1/8 of an atom in these corners, 1/8 of an atom. But you have a full atom right smack dab in the center of a cube. So the number of atoms inside a BCC, body-centered cubic, is going to be 2. Right? Now in a face-centered cubic, the atoms in the unit cell are shared at the corner. Okay, so that's 1/8 of an atom inside this cube. But then you have full atoms on the face. So one face here, front face, back face, left face, and right face. All of them have atoms. Now, this atom here at the center of this face, it actually is 50% shared with this unit cell and 50% shared with the unit cell on the left. So this represents inside this cube, this packing brick, there's 50% of this atom. So you have this atom that's at the center of each face is shared 50%. So that's actually 50% of 6 is 3. and we know that these are 1/8 of an atom, and so the simple cubic unit cell has a number of atoms is 1, so this is a simple cubic unit cell with an atom at each face of the cube. So 1 atom from simple cubic, and then plus 3. Remember, each of these is shared 50% with the adjacent unit cell. So 3 plus 1 is 4. So the number of atoms inside a face-centered cubic is going to be 4. Examples of face-centered cubic is going to be copper, nickel, and then lead, okay, according to the handout. Examples of body-centered cubic, remember there's going to be two atoms in the unit cell. That's going to be iron in your lab. And then simple cubic, there's no example that you're going to have in this lab. There's also something called coordination number. So the coordination number is the number of atoms each atom in the unit cell is going to be touching. So the coordination number for simple cubic cell is going to be 6. So this atom is in touch with 6 other atoms in the unit cell as they pack. This BCC, this atom is going to be in touch with 8 other atoms. So this one and then this one as a total as the unit cell gets into its 3-dimensional shape. Each atom will be in contact with 8 others. And then for an FCC, the coordination number, which again is the number of atoms each of these atoms in the unit cell will touch, that's going to be 12. So that's the coordination. So let's talk very briefly about coordination numbers. A coordination number is defined as how many atoms another atom is touching inside a unit cell. So if you pluck out an atom or even part of an atom inside the unit cell, what is its nearest neighbor? How many nearest neighbors does it have? So for the simple cubic, so we got to remember there's 8 lattice points for a total of 1 atom inside a simple cubic cell. So remember in this lab, the radius is always going to be 1 centimeter. So if we take these 1 centimeter spheres, that's another thing you need to remember. We're modeling these atoms as spheres. If you pack 8 spheres, you're going to see that the coordination number for, let's just pick this gold sphere here. The coordination number is going to be 6. So we'll just pick this corner one here. It's touching 1, 2, 3, the one at the bottom 4, 5, and this corner one would be 6. So picking one atom, it's jutting or butting in, touching to 6 other atoms. Let's skip over to body-centered cubic. So a body-centered cubic, you have 8 atoms, plus you have 1 atom smack dab in the center. Okay, so that's a total of 9 atoms. So you pack 9 atoms. Remember the criteria. Each atom is a sphere, 1 centimeter radius. So this is the best packing arrangement for that. So the coordination number, let's just pick the red here, the red center one. The coordination number, so the way we pack 9 spheres is, let's take a look at the center one. This center one is actually in contact with 8 other atoms. The diagram above from your textbook actually has a better depiction. So here's that big center atom, the whole atom, and the body-centered cubic. It's in touch with 8 other atoms inside the unit cell. So 1, 2, this one would be 3, 4, 5, 6, the one here 7, and the one behind, which you cannot see, is going to be 8. So the face-centered cubic is going to be a little bit more complicated in terms of its coordination number. So how many atoms or parts of atoms are packed inside an FCC face-centered cubic? So we have here the 4 lattice points here. That's 4. The 4 lattice points at the bottom of the cube, so that's another 4. So 4 plus 4 is 8. And then you have an atom. Actually, it's 50% because remember, these are packed. So then we have an atom at each of the faces, the center face of each cube. So that's going to be, should be about 6 of them. So there's 14 atoms, one at each corner and then one at the face, so 14 atoms. Again, remember our criteria. The atom is modeled as a sphere, number one, and then the atom has a radius of 1 centimeter. So how will you pack 14 atoms that are in a sphere, 1 centimeter? It turns out you can pack it like this. This is the packing arrangement for face-centered cubic. Remember, your face-centered cubic are going to be your copper and your nickel and your lead. So if you just pick, let's just pick arbitrarily here, the red sphere. When you pick the red sphere, you're going to see how many atoms is that red sphere in direct contact with. And doing the math is actually going to be 12. So there's actually 5 reds that this red is in contact with, 6 above, so that's 11, and then this blue purple one at the bottom. So 12. The coordination number of FCC is 12. And then don't forget the coordination number of BCC, bodied centered cubic, is going to be 8. Okay, that's very easy here if you look up and scroll up to this diagram. All right, 8. And then simple cubic cell, this is actually going to be 6. So remember, in a simple cube, the lattice points, part of the atom, 1/8 of the atom is in the corners of the cube. So the atom here is in touch with 6 other atoms. So coordination number for FCC is going to be 6. So let's start going over the pre-lab and the post-lab. So for the first pre-lab question, it's asking for deriving a procedure to determine the density of that. So the way we derive the density is by weighing out a certain mass and then checking out the volume displacement. So this is what I weighed. Your data can actually be a little bit more accurate because I rounded. And also, when you read from a graduated cylinder, you want to make sure you read it to the 10th decimal place. So instead of 4 mils, you can say 4.1 mils or 4.2 mils. You want to be able to read the 10th decimal place because that's the accuracy of a graduated cylinder. So you weigh it, you measure the water displacement, and automatically, very easily, you can get the density of each of these 5 metals that you found. So it's mass over volume. So on Excel, I could do that and get the mass. So here the mass is going to be in grams per mil. And also one conversion factor that would be good to know is that 1 milliliter is the same thing as 1 centimeter cubed. Question is the coordination number. So for that one, I refer you to the previous section on coordination number that's on the video. This third one is going to be interesting here. So given the aluminum unit cell as face-centered cubic, the density is 2.70 grams per centimeter cubed, and this is its molecular weight based from the periodic table. So the edge length. So remember, the edge length is measured as A. So how will we calculate the edge length? So the way we're going to do that is we realize that in an aluminum unit cell that's face-centered cubic, there's 4 atoms. Okay, inside that brick, inside that unit cell, there's 4 atoms. So the calculation is going to proceed like this. We know that for every 1 mole of aluminum, there's about 27 or 26.98 grams of aluminum. So let's do that conversion factor. Remember, we want to get everything to cancel out at the end. So let's do this in our calculator and see what we will get. Doing this on my calculator, I'm getting about 1.80 times 10 to the minus 22 grams of aluminum inside that unit cell, which we've established as face-centered cubic. And there's 4 atoms in that unit cell. Well, we know the density of aluminum because the problem tells us the density of aluminum is 2.70 grams per centimeter cubed. Remember, 1 liter and 1 centimeter cubed are the same thing. So let's go ahead and from there figure out the volume. So the mass is calculated above 1.80 times 10 to the minus 22 grams per unit cell. Our density given to us in the problem is 2.70 grams per centimeter cubed. So doing that on my calculator, I am getting a value of, so that's the volume inside the unit cell. But that's not what the question is asking. The question is asking for the edge length. So you got to remember these are cubes. Okay, so what's the volume of a cube? The volume of a cube is a cubed. A is the edge length. So to get the edge length a, all you got to do is take the cube root of this. Okay, not the square root, but the cube root, because the volume of a cube is a cubed, a being the edge length. So let's take the cube root of this. On your calculator, you can do a cube root, or you can take this to the power of 1/3. Okay, so instead of taking this to the power of 3, to get the cube root, you will take it to the power of 1/3 cube root, or take this to the power of 1/3. So doing that, my units also become centimeters, which is the appropriate unit of length. So taking the cube root of this volume on my calculator, I'm getting a value of about 4. So I went ahead and converted this to picometers. You can convert it to nanometers. Usually edge lengths are given in angstroms, and angstrom is 1 times 10 to the minus 10 meters. Let's look at the post-lab questions here. So calculate the percentage of empty space in the 3 cubic unit cells. So you got to remember we're packing these spheres, okay, in a certain way, and how much space is left open. You want to pack it such that, remember, solids pack really, really tightly. So you really want to minimize this empty space as best as you can based upon how these atoms are arranged. So let's figure out how to the empty space in an SCC, okay, simple cubic cell. Simple cubic cell, you have to remember there's one atom in the sphere, in the unit cells, and the volume of a sphere is going to be 4/3 pi r cubed. Remember, r by default is 1 centimeter. So the volume of a sphere, which is going to be the atom here, okay, so the volume of the sphere is the atom, so that's 4/3 pi r cubed. The r is going to be 1 centimeter. And the volume of a cube, remember, these unit cells, these bricks in the brick houses are cubes. So the volume of that cube is going to be a cubed. So a we need to find. For a simple cubic cell, a is actually going to have the formula 2r. So that's something you will need to know. That's actually listed right here. A is equal to 2r for a simple cubic cell. So a is equal to 2r. Remember, the radius by default is 1 centimeter, so the edge length is going to be 2 centimeters. So let's go ahead and figure out the empty space. So the empty space is actually going to be the ratio between volume of a sphere divided by a volume of a cube. So if you take the volume of a sphere, r is 1, divided by the volume of a cube, a is equal to 2 centimeters, you will get the percentage of occupied space, actually. To get the percentage of empty space, you take 100% minus that. All right, so the percentage of occupied space occupied by the sphere is going to be the space of the sphere divided by the space of the cube. That's the percentage as occupied by the sphere, which is the atom. We're modeling the atom as a 1 centimeter sphere. So the centimeters cube cancel. Pi is about 3.14 times 4/3. 2 to the power of 3, 2 to the power of 3 is 8. So doing this on my calculator, I am getting for an SCC about 52.36%. So that's going to be the percent occupied for SCC. So the empty space is going to be 100% minus that. That's going to be about 47.64%. So that's going to be your answer for that post-lab question for SCC. Now we got to do this for BCC and also for FCC. So let's now do this for BCC. So for BCC, there's 2 atoms that are packed inside the unit cell. So the edge length for BCC is actually 4r square root of 3. It's actually given to you here for BCC. A, the edge length is 4r square root of 3. So and we'll do our exact ratio of volume of a sphere divided by the volume of a cube. R will always be 1 centimeter. A is going to be 4r square root of 3. R will always be 1 centimeter. So let's do volume of sphere divided by the volume of cube. Check out that ratio. 100% minus that value is going to be your percent of empty space. So now talking about the percent empty space for BCC, volume of the sphere divided by volume of the cubed. 2 atoms, so we multiply the volume of the sphere by 2. A is 4 square root of 3. So don't forget, centimeters get cubed. The units also get cubed. So the centimeters cubed cancel. pi is about 3.14. You can put that in your calculator as pi directly. And 4 square root of 3, you cube that. On your calculator, I'm getting about 68.02%. 100 minus that for the percent empty space for BCC is about 31.98%. So the percent empty space for FCC, we have 4 atoms in the unit cell. So we have to take the volume of the sphere, which is our modeled atom, multiply it by 4. The volume of the cube is going to be edge length. So the edge length for a BCC is r square root of 8. So you could actually look that up right here in our notes. For FCC, edge length A is going to be square root of 8r. R will always be 1 centimeter. So we'll take the ratio here, volume of the sphere over the volume of the cube. Volume of the sphere, we multiply it by 4 because there's 4 atoms in the unit cell for FCC. A is going to be r square root of 8. Again, that's the equation that's derived, so really no need to memorize or anything. We just looked up that equation. R is 1, so square root of 8 cubed. Don't forget, you cube the units, so centimeter cubes cancel. I'm getting 74.05%, and the empty space is 100% minus that, so it's 25.95. So let's go over post-lab question number 2. Calculate the edge length A of the metal samples used in this experiment. So the first thing we want to do is we got our density. So going back to our data here, I got a density for copper of about 6.75 grams per centimeter cubed. And copper is FCC. FCC means there's 4 atoms per unit cell. So there's 4 atoms per unit cell in a copper. So let's just go ahead and calculate the volume, and then we'll cube root that volume. When we cube root that volume, that will give us the edge length. So we'll do that for copper, and then for that same procedure you'll do for nickel. Iron is BCC, so it's not 4 atoms per unit cell. It's actually going to be 2 atoms per unit cell. And HCP, hexagonal closet packing, though we didn't cover it, it's actually 4 atoms per unit cell. So I'll do the one for copper. It'll be the same thing that you'll do for nickel. And then lead will be 4 atoms per unit cell as well as zinc. So we calculated 6.75 grams per centimeter cubed as our density. There's 4 atoms per unit cell, so let's go ahead and do this calculation. So because copper is a FCC, there's 4 atoms of copper per unit cell by virtue of it being FCC. And we know that for every 1 mole of copper, there's about and we know that for every 1 mole of copper, there's Avogadro's number of atoms, so 6.022 times 10 to the 23. And we know that 1 mole of copper has about 63, in my book, 63.55 grams of copper. So this will give me the grams of copper. Density is mass over volume. So volume is mass over density, data here, 6.75 grams per centimeter cubed. And the centimeter cubed flips back up to the numerator. I'm getting a value of about, right, so all we got to do is take the cube root of this volume to get the edge length. So this is our edge length in centimeters. The problem actually asks us to do it in angstroms. All right, so let's go ahead and convert the centimeters to angstroms. To do that, I'll convert the centimeters to meters, and then from the meters to angstroms. So our edge length, we converted to angstroms. This is the conversion factor that was given to us in the problem, and this is about 3.69, about 4 angstrom. So that's what you'll do for copper. So this is the answer for copper. You're going to do the exact same thing for nickel, because it's also FCC. So there's going to be 4 atoms of nickel per unit cell. And then you're going to put in the density here that you calculated. Now what I calculated for nickel was a density of 6.5. So instead of 6.75 for nickel, you put your value, my value 6.5. Nickel is going to be about 4 atoms. So everything is going to be the same in terms of the pipeline. The only thing I want to warn you here is when you do your values for iron, Okay, iron will be 2 atoms of iron per unit cell, and you're going to put in the density you got for iron. Now for the hexagonal closet packing, that's going to be 4 atoms per unit cell. So the exact same position here for zinc, 4 atoms of zinc, and then you're going to put in the value of the density that you calculated for zinc. In my data, I calculated a density of 5 grams per mil. So that's how you will work for all of these 4 metals, getting the appropriate edge lengths. The third post-lab question has to do with calculating the percent error. So let's go ahead and look at our data here. We want to do this for the edge lengths, okay? And then question number 4, you're going to do the exact same thing, except you're going to use the densities. So let's do copper, since I've done that example. So the calculated edge length of copper, what did I get for the calculated edge length of copper? The calculated edge length of copper, I got 3.969 angstroms, okay, minus the accepted value of copper. So what's the accepted value of copper? The accepted value of copper in terms of its edge length is 3.615 angstroms, 3.615 angstroms. You divide it by the accepted value for copper, and for copper, that's going to be 3.615 angstroms. So this is for copper, and we're going to take that fraction, multiply it times 100%. And that will give us the percent error, 9.8%. So not bad with the data. All right, so that's the percent error of the edge length for copper. And we will do the exact same thing on your edge lengths that you calculated based on what you've done in here. Okay, for nickel and then iron and then zinc. Okay, I'm not going to put in units because units cancel out. And the accepted value of the density of copper is the accepted density value for copper is 8.92 grams per centimeter cubed. And that divided by the accepted value, 8.92, multiplied by 100. We take the absolute value because really percentages cannot be a negative number, so just go ahead and make it positive. When I do that on my calculator, I'm getting minus 24.33% error. So again, like I said, you can take the absolute value if you want. It really doesn't matter. So that's my percent error for the density of copper. So I got the percent error for the edge length. I put 8% percent error of the density for copper. So you'll do the exact same thing for nickel, iron, and lead. All right, the final one has to do with another type of packing, and that's called the hexagonal closet packing. This is for zinc, and this has 4 atoms, and its edge length is the cube root of its unit cell volume. So let's calculate the edge length for zinc. So for zinc, they tell us it's hexagonal closet packing, 4 atoms per unit cell. And we know that 1 mole of zinc has Avogadro's number of zinc atoms. 1 mole of zinc from the periodic table is 65.39 grams of zinc. So the amount of mass packed inside that unit cell filled with zinc atoms, I'm getting a value of, when I do that on my calculator, 4.34 times 10 to the minus 22 grams. All right, so density is mass, volume, excuse me, is mass over density. So the mass that we just calculated is this 4.34 times 10 to the minus 22 grams. The density of zinc, what did we get for our density of zinc? I got a value of about 5 grams. So doing this on my calculator, I'm getting a value of about 9 times 10 to the minus 23 centimeter cubed, or 8.69. So we can round it up to 9. Why am I cube rooting this? Because they tell us, if you read the problem, the edge length is the cube root of its unit cell volume. So all I got to do is cube root that, and I'll get my answer in units of centimeter. And when I do that, I get about 4.43 times 10 to the minus 8 centimeters. Let's go ahead and convert that to angstroms as well. Getting my edge length A for zinc, hexagonal closet packing, this many centimeters, going ahead and converting that to angstrom. Remember our conversion factor given to us. This is going to be about 4.43 angstroms. Now let's figure out part B and C, the percent error in our density So our percent error, let's go back up. Our percent error is this equation here. So the calculated value of my density for zinc was 5. Okay, I'm not going to put in units because I know error does not have units. The accepted value for zinc that they should tell us is 7.14 grams per centimeter cubed. We're going to multiply that by 100% to get us into a percentage range. And doing that on my calculator, I am getting an answer of 29.97%. Really doesn't matter. So that was our percent error in density for zinc. So in order to calculate the accepted percent error of the edge length, you need to find the accepted edge length. So we get the accepted edge length value from the accepted density value. So the accepted density of zinc is about 7.14 grams per centimeter cubed. And yep, that's right. Okay. So we'll do the exact same thing as before, but we'll plug in as our density the accepted density instead of our calculated density. So doing this on my calculator, so taking the cube root of that, I'm getting my answer in centimeters to be about, and taking that, putting in our accepted density, we got now our accepted edge length. We'll convert this to angstrom, so 3.93 angstrom. Now we can go ahead and calculate the percent error of our edge length A. Again, I'm not going to put in the units here. The accepted value of our edge length that we got from our accepted density is 3.93 angstroms. The accepted value is, once again, 3.93 angstroms, which is what we got from our density, accepted value of our density. So convert that to percent. And doing this on my calculator, I'm getting an answer of 12.72%. So that is our percent error in edge length for zinc.